So we're going to talk about in this episode is sort of a theme that I've been using in my life for the last few months. And it's a theme that I think is needed in business and in being a chief information security officer. And that theme is this: simplicity. Go back to the basics. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a chief information security officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome. You know what time it is, my friends. It is time. Put on your superhero cape. Put on your seatbelt. We are going to take off on this episode. It is time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. I am just so pumped and so excited because things are just coming together so well. I've been working, as you know, for many years. You could actually call it probably going on 20 plus years since my first assignment in 1998, where I was the official, unofficial CISO. What I mean by that is I was the chief information security officer before that title existed, right? So I worked with the executive team report. And basically since then, I've been focused on how can we create the ultimate chief information security officer? Because yes, there is a lot of business and emotion in others, but there's also metrics and systemization and processes that need to be in place. And I feel like after all these years, I just had on Friday my group coaching. I'd love to have you join me. I mean, if you're getting value out of these podcasts, imagine accelerating your career by 10 or 20x. Imagine by 6 months, the end of this year, you have achieved more in moving towards becoming a chief information security officer than you have in the last 10 years. If you are ready to sort of take your career to that next level, I'm ready and I'm excited. And this episode, as always, I'm going to give you tips and tricks that if you want to go in and do that slow path, it's really meant to get you excited. But when you're ready to accelerate, work with me directly, coaching, direction, planning. I mean, I'm ready if you're ready. Let's go, my friends. So we're going to talk about in this episode is sort of a theme that I've been using in my life for the last few months. And it's a theme that I think is needed in business and in being a chief information security officer. And that theme is this: simplicity. Go back to the basics. I feel like in my life, I got to the point where I was just doing so much, so busy, and you step back going, what are the things that really matter? What are the things that really move the needle forward? What are the things that are really going to help me fulfill my purpose and mission in life, which is to secure cyberspace, to make cyberspace a safe place to live, work, and raise a family? And what I realized is a key part of that is creating an army. A key part of that is why I'm doing the CISO coaching, the CISO certification, and why I'm going to put in a lot more energy and effort in marketing and expanding it, because we're having great people in the program. But the army I need, the army we need, the army the country needs, the army the world needs, we're going to need hundreds, if not thousands, of people that understand business, chief officers focused on information security. This is not a small problem. This is a problem that's been ignored for too long. And we don't need 10 or 20. We don't need hundreds. We're going to need thousands of you. So this is one where I always have folks going, Eric, is there really that big a need? And then I also go in and we'll get some comments. I track and look at all the comments where you get people going, Eric, there really aren't any CISO jobs, right? We've been trying. There's none out there. They're not hiring. And this is always where it's hard for me to respond, because I love and care about people. And I don't ever mean to do anything that's negative or insulting them. But the reality is you just don't have the right skills. Because trust me, I talk to execs. I'm talking to companies, headhunters. There is a huge need out there. The need is going to increase tremendously. And the reality is you just don't have the right training and mindset if you're thinking that there's no jobs for CISOs. The analogy, I was talking to one person, I sort of said, I mean this in the nicest way, but it would be like me going in and trying to get a job at my age, in my height and physique as an NFL quarterback. So I call up all of the different teams, right? I call up the Players Association. I try to get in contact with the commissioner and get no response. Everyone's turning me down. No one would even give me a chance. No one gives me an interview. So I go in and I make the statement. There are absolutely no jobs or openings for NFL quarterbacks. I think we all see the point in the message, right? We'd all sort of laugh and be like, no, I actually think there's a pretty big need. I love playing sports. I don't like watching it. It's just not my thing. I like to be active. What a surprise, right? Running around, I'd rather be tackling you than watch somebody else tackle or throw a football. But they have it on in the gym. So I sort of keep up with it. And at least from what I can see this season, there's a big need for quarterbacks, right? There's a huge need. I know they had some of the pre-games last night. There's a huge need. So for me to sit there and say, based on my data and my experience, because I was not able to get a job as an NFL quarterback, there's no jobs. Clearly not true. If you have the right skill, there's a huge need. And I would argue that CISOs are the same way. Whether it's starting off as a chief information security officer or a deputy or a director or a manager, it's one of those. It depends on your interest. It depends on where you're at. Just give you an idea right now, some of the active clients, I'm always careful with giving away information, but I ask them at a high level I can. And some of the clients I'm working with right now, one of them is a CISO that wants to be a CEO. So we're going in and we're working with them and grooming them on how they can position their knowledge and expertise and show the board that the next generation of CEOs need to be people that have information security experience. And this precedent is happening. If you go back and look at the late 90s, early 2000, when CIOs, when basically, I know it's hard for us to go back, but if you go back to the 90s, that's when companies were transitioning to technology, transitioning to data centers and server room, going from paper and pencil to computers, electronics, and laptops. And what a lot of companies realized is in the late 90s, early 2000, especially with Y2K, IT was so critical that they were actually making CIO CEOs. That was a huge trend back then because they realized we need somebody in a business that intimately understands technology in order for us to survive. And then, of course, as that got mature and we moved through the late 2000s, 2009, 10, we realized that operations and finance were critical. So then you saw COOs and CFOs becoming CEOs. And now I predicted it, and it's happening. Companies are realizing how critical and important cybersecurity is. And we're actually seeing companies move CISOs into the CEO role. And once again, I always joke it's not arrogant, it's just experience and knowledge of being in the space. My predictions always come true. They're just a little off on timing. The other prediction that everyone thought I was crazy, and it's actually happening. I know 5 companies that have been doing this in the last year, and that's instead of the CISO reporting to the CIO reports to the CISO. Because as we talked about, cybersecurity is understanding, managing, and mitigating risk of your critical data being disclosed, altered, or denied access. Denied access or availability is the CIO's job. So CIO is one of 3 responsibilities of the CISO. So having a CISO report to a CIO is insane. And companies are waking up and doing that. So we're seeing organizational changes of CIOs reporting to CISOs. Then as the CISO now has, because if it's confidentiality, integrity, availability, the CISO technically has the CIO, Chief Risk Officer, Chief Data Protection Officer, and you start looking at it, and that's a good part of the company, right? So having them elevate up to either a COO or a CEO role actually makes a whole lot of logical sense. So I'm working with those people. I also have some folks that are retired military, right? They're very technical based and they've done great work for our country, but very technical focused, and they want to move in to that role. So we're going in and looking at getting them initially some experience as either directors or deputies so they can get some of that more business experience. And then the 3-year plan is to have them position up into a full-blown CISO. So we're doing 3, 5, and 10-year planning with these folks, depending on where you're at. So some folks go, Eric, I'm not ready to be a CISO for 3 years. Well, guess what? We should start planning now, right? We shouldn't wait till 3 years. I'll go in and show you the career track that you need. If your goal is to be a CISO in 3 years, I got you. I have some folks, CISO in 6 months. I have other folks that really are more focused on entrepreneur. So I have one that we actually helped him build out his own vCISO business. He currently has 3 clients, bringing in more now than he was making at his job, with a scale of basically over the next 12 months of doubling that, and in 2 years, tripling that income level. So this is not something where I'm just going in and it's a magic formula. Let's make you a CISO. I want to sit down and understand, what are your goals? What are your aspirations? When do you want to be a CISO? 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. I've had people come in and they've been trying to be a CISO for 2 years, couldn't do it. It wasn't technical. It wasn't anything other than some mindset. So we did some mindset shifts. Boom, got them jobs in 3 months where there was a competitive bid against them. So it's one of those, we need to get down, and whether you work with me or not, you need to figure out where you want to be in 10 to 15 years. If that's too hard, 5, but you can't go less than that because you're selling yourself short. Think big. We have to think bigger. Where do you ultimately want to be at the end of your career? Do you want to be a CEO of a Fortune 5 company? Do you want to be a CISO of a Fortune 5 company? Maybe I have some folks, they want to go in and they want to volunteer and teach at a college. I mean, that's great. Let's get you the money. Let's get you the stability with cyber, and then you can teach cyber at the top university. So nothing is off the table. It's your vision and dream, and my job is to draw it out of you. Because so many people like me are so focused on the immediate need of helping themselves. Eric, I have to provide for my family. I have to provide for others. I have to do all this. I'm so busy with family, work, and business, and all this stuff. I don't have time to think that. And that's your biggest mistake. You need to make time. We need to make time for you to figure out, what is your true purpose? What do you want to do? And where do you want to be in 5, 10, or 15 years? So if you haven't given that thought, that's a top priority. My goal for you is in the next 2 months, and if that's too much, end of the year, but your end of the year target must be that you are very clear on your 15, your 10, and your 5-year goals, your targets, where you want to be and where you want to go. So I always sort of get off tangents, but that's sort of my style. And if you're still listening, you must enjoy it, where I just sort of go down little rabbit holes, come back. But that's just, I just love sharing so much information. I get excited and just give you lots of data points. And that's really, these podcasts are all about just dropping gold all over the place and seeing which one resonates with you. I hope they all resonate, but very often I'll get comments going, Eric, you had these great points, but this one really hit home, or that one. So I try to not just give one nugget of gold on a podcast, but just drop a whole lot out there to see what works and what sticks for you. So I was going back to the basics, where I realized in my life is we've just made life way too complicated, right? We've just gone in and made it a lot more complicated. Simplicity is the key. And I think that's happened with a lot of companies and a lot of CISOs and security folks. There's been so much reactionary things going on with companies. Attacks, ransomware, data theft, trade secrets stolen, malware, virus, you name it. That's basically CISOs or security professionals. We've got so wound around the axle, we've sort of lost track of reality. We sort of lost track of what are the basic core things that we need to do. So that's sort of this episode, and I'm guessing, knowing how I'm going and just sort of looking at the time, this will probably turn into a series, which I love, and hopefully you love. So first and foremost, if you are a CISO or you want to be a CISO, you want to be a chief officer, you want to be somebody who's helping and growing the business using cybersecurity as a secret weapon. So if you're focused on growth and expansion of the business, that means you need to understand the business. You need to build up a network and build respect and rapport with all the other executives. Everyone always goes in, and as security professionals, and I did this for the longest time, I always focused on respect. I wanted to be respected. I wanted people to go, Eric can solve any problem. Eric, if we give him enough information and details, he can solve any problem in cybersecurity. That is what I was focused on. That's respect. I'm not the smartest person in the room, but when it comes to technology and cyber, I understand and know how to solve those problems. But here's the issue. You can have all the respect on the planet, but if you don't have rapport, nobody's going to want to work with you. I remember working with a company where I came in and they're like, Eric, we have a major, major problem. And I said, what's the problem? They said, our head of IT, and he wants the CIO title. And they said, there's no way we're giving it to him, but he basically knows and controls everything. And we respect the hell out of him, but nobody can work with him. He won't communicate. He thinks that the key to power is keeping all the keys to yourself, keeping all the secrets. So if you needed to know where something was or the passwords or anything like that, he was the only one. So if something happened to him, it would be problematic for the company. So there was the respect, but he had zero rapport. So I had to go in and basically, because it was getting bad where like he really was withholding information and basically controlling this $100 million company. And then he was threatening that basically, if you don't give me the title and you don't give me the salary, I'm going to leave and you're going to be locked out of all your systems. Essentially, an internal ransomware attack. Right? And unfortunately, that happens more times than not because companies are not aware. So I had to go in and essentially build rapport and just be honest with him going, listen, the path you are on is not going to end well for you. It's a destructive path, and we need to come up with a path that gets you what you want that actually doesn't hurt the company. And I basically had to go in and work through scenarios on getting what did he really want. He really didn't want the CIO title. He just wanted the executives to actually respect him and not try to isolate him, which I said it's a two-way street. So we worked on a whole plan where we ended up making him chief scientist. We dispersed his knowledge across 5 other people. We gave him a 5-year contract with a really nice salary. The salary of a CIO and basically everything he wanted. And then it was a win-win. And then I worked with him for 2.5 years of how he could actually have human skills. That's really what rapport is, and build rapport. And by the time I was done, He would meet with the executives on a regular basis. They would invite him to the meetings. It was sort of good win-win. But the problem is he focused too much on R1, which is respect, and didn't focus on R2, which is building that rapport. So how do you build rapport? Communication, communication, communication. Right? We forget, and I would argue today, in where we're at with companies, probably one of the most critical skills to being a world-class CISO is being a world-class communicator. You probably heard my phrase, my golden rule. I was actually just on the phone earlier with a good friend of mine. He was having some problems in his relationship with his wife and really upset. I was just like, dude, let's go back to the basics. Communication, communication, communication. And my rule is all problems are started by lack of communication, and all problems are solved with proper communication. And I basically worked with him for a little bit, and we came up with a good solution. Essentially, I'll jump to the chase because you might be go, Eric, why are you giving marriage advice? Because guess what? Working with your executives, it's marriage advice. It's a relationship, right? Relationships are relationships. Whether it's with a significant other, formerly married, a friend, a business associate, the rules are the same. The problems are the same. It's relationships, relationships, relationships. And what it basically came down to was he was not listening, and he was trying to solve the problem when the other person really just wanted to be heard. They just want to be heard and understood. And you go, Eric, but why were you picking on him? There takes two to tango, because he was the one asking for advice. So guess what? I'm going to go in and tell you what you need to do. And some people I work with initially, but Eric, you need to tell this to the CEO. You need to tell this to the COO. And I'm like, no, if they ask, I'll tell them. But if you want to have a successful career, you have to take total and complete ownership. You can't point fingers at others. Yes, maybe they are or not, but here's what I'll tell you. You don't become CEO or COO of a company being a poor communicator. You just don't. Lone wolves do not make CEOs. CEOs are relationship masters. They have relationships. They have connections. They know who to call. They know who's on speed dial. They got to where they got because they are a master communicator and have built masterful relationships that have got them to where they are. So not picking on you. And I had the same issue, my friend. So we're all in this together. But the reality is this. If you want to succeed as a chief officer, you need to fix and improve your communication, because that's how you're going to get to the top. So when I'm big on data, you know I'm data-driven decisions, not emotions. Let's get down to the facts here. Communication. I want you to go in and I want you to write down the top 10 people in your company you need to have great relationships with. I'll help you out. CEO, COO, CFO, Chief Legal Counsel, Chief Auditor. Then all of the VPs of the divisions. So the vice presidents of manufacturing, the vice presidents of sales, the vice president of production, and then, I mean, that's going to get you pretty much there. If you have relationships with those folks, you will be wildly successful. So I want you to go in, do a spreadsheet, and put them in the first column. And column header are key relationships. Then the next column, I want you to go in and label email. The next one is phone. And the next one is in person. And now I want you to go in for the last 90 days. The last 90 days, I want you to put numbers in for that. How many times did you email your CEO in the last 90 days? How many times did you talk to them on the phone or text them in the last 90 days? And how many times did you actually meet with them in person? If you're like many people that come into my program, and this is why they come in, because awareness, they're like, Eric, we need help. There's a whole lot of zeros. And that's okay. I've had people come into my program where the whole matrix was zeros. It was all zeros, right? And that was okay, because then I know what to fix. I can go in and look at the numbers very quickly and be able to see where the problems and issues were. That's my unique gift. I can see patterns and I can identify the issues. So one example is somebody I was working with is first tier. So like directors they had on that. It was a smaller company. So there was like 4 COs. There were 3 VPs. And then there was like 3 or 4 directors. And what was interesting is for the directors, there were numbers. 3, 2, 4, 2, 4. But they were basically emailing, phone, and in person on a regular basis. Then when you got to the VPs, there was maybe 1 or 2 numbers, ones. The rest were zeros. When you got to the C, all zeros. And the issue was confidence. He felt very comfortable talking to directors because that's what he felt he was. He felt he was at a direct, even though he had the CISO title, his mind, he was like, I am at a director level, and that's who I feel comfortable talking with. So that's who he spent this time with. He didn't think he was at the VP level, so we would only communicate with them if they reached out first. And even though he had the CISO title, he did not think he was even close to being at the CO level, and therefore tried to avoid communication with them. And once he had that data and we sat down, I'm like, do you see the problem? And he did. So then we worked and put together a plan of how to improve that communication, strategies, and methods of how to get him to that level that he needed to be. But that's the reality, my friends, is go in and gain awareness. You can't fix problems unless you are aware of those problems. And that's the first thing I do with coaching. And I do this a lot in here, so you can get some of the awareness ahead of time. But then I go in, I can look at the patterns, identify where the issues and challenges are, and then we can go in and work on a solution based on your time frame. Because here's the reality. I can make somebody a master communicator and have you have those numbers for every chief officer be 2, 3, 4, where you're doing a few emails, few texting in person. To me, the in person is key. You should be meeting, if you're a chief officer, you're a chief information security officer, you're a chief officer, you should be meeting with every chief officer in person, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's grabbing coffee. The goal is once a week. So if we're talking 90 days, that number should be 12. Now, I'm not going to take you from 0 to 12 overnight. So the first thing is we got to get monthly. So we got to get that number to above 3. We got to get that number to above 3. That's the number that matters. Now, if the way you work and the way they operate, you have to send a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls to get there, that's great. But I'm really less concerned with those. But here's the reality. If email is 0 and phone is 0, it's a guarantee that the in-person will be 0. So I use the first 2 columns to troubleshoot how we can go in and get that number to 12. So we go in and say, okay, let's increase email. Increasing email. Does that increase that in-person? Yes, cool, let's do it. No, let's make phone calls. Let's make text. Let's go in and figure out what method connects you best with your chief officers so we can get that number in a couple months to 3, then 6, then 9. It's gradual. Our goal isn't in a month to get you from 0 to 12. Not realistic, and it'll be ineffective. We want to get you in 6 months from 0 to 12. That's very, very reasonable. So just want you to spend some time this week on going in and saying, okay, what are some ways that you can simplify your life as a CISO? What are things that you're doing that you don't need to do? What are things that either you can stop doing or you can delegate to others? Because here's the reality. As a chief officer, you should be only doing the things that only you can do. If somebody else can do it or it doesn't need to get done, then you shouldn't be doing it. That right there will start to simplify. Then go in and say, okay, let's go in and start delegating and making sure that our team is only doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because I'll tell you what happens in business when you're a chief officer is you've pushed things down that your team is overloaded. So now if you go in and you try to give your team more things, they're going to be stressed out and that's not good. So you need to go in and the people that are reporting to you that you're ultimately going to delegate, you need to go in and simplify what they're doing so they have time. So this way, when you simplify what you're doing and delegate down to them, they will actually have the time and ability to do that. And then go in and take a look at that matrix. Take a look at the communication metrics and start asking yourself, how can I improve communication with the key executives in my business? And as always, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to get you my coaching program. I'd love to build a customized plan so you can be the best version you can be. Once again, thank you for joining Life of a CISO. And until next week, have an amazing week.